being naive about voting and being naive about the actual issues and how they impact you later on in life, I would always vote Democrat. And it dawned on me a few years back, I started switching myself to independent. And when it came time to vote, I would then go in, vote as a certain way, and then revert myself back to independent because I felt like there was a shift in me as I got older.
Thanks for joining us. I'm so excited to talk to Niyoka Powell. She is running for Senate District 1. And we are so excited because maybe I'm a little too excited because I would love to have her join me in the Senate and have another strong voice up there. So we wanted to just ask Niyoka some questions about what it's like to run in that Senate district and some other interesting things that came up that really piqued my interest. And I know it piqued yours. You put out a press release, so we're going to talk about that. But just to start off real quick, give us your stump speech. Like, why are you running for office?
Thank you so much for having me, Jessica. I am running for office because it's time for Providence to realize what we're doing to the state as a whole, and how we actually are that problem child of the entire state because we're having such a difficult time mitigating how the school system runs, how people live in the city, and how people can afford to live in any part of the state because the city has become such a burden on the rest of the state. I'm running for office because Providence has been my home since I moved here for college back in 2005. I have lived in the city of Providence my whole longer than I've lived anywhere, actually. I was born in Jamaica. I moved here from Jamaica when I was 9 years old, moved to Connecticut, and then at 18 moved to Providence. So I've lived in Providence longer than I've lived anywhere in the world. Um, and just the experiences of helping the city, working for nonprofits, volunteering my time, and primarily working in healthcare, I've gotten to know the people of Providence and seen what they've gone through, myself, what I've gone through, both as a single mom, working mother, and finishing up college, all while working and dealing with these life stressors. It's time to shift our narrative from a more affluent focus city, because we are certainly not that yet, to more focused on families and making family more affordable, helping with the wage stagnation and the gentrification of the city, because the real people that are hurting in the city are our young people that are up and coming in the next generation. So that's our K through 12. And we really need to focus on the type of environment that they're living in and what their families have to go through in order to get them to that prosperity level.
Wow. Niyoka, there were, a number of issues that you mentioned there why you're running for office. As you're campaigning and going door to door, are there issues that just seem to be recurring over and over again, things that really resonate with the people or seem to be on their mind?
Yeah, I
Providence
mean,
is always in the news, but what seems to be the talk?
regardless of where I go in the North End, because the North End has an affluent part. It has obviously the subsidized housing over at Chad Brown, and then they have the mix in between of a more middle class or upper middle class essence. And so, regardless of where I went in the district to knock on doors, people were complaining, or in terms of their actual struggles that they're having, revolves around wage stagnation, inflation, and the availability of assistance with getting their kids the education that they need. So education is a huge thing for a lot of the families living in the area. It's something that one would think would be like a no-brainer, that you would fix the school system in order to help the people prosper. And what we've come to find is that, monies are going into the system, but solutions are not coming out of the system.
So true. Education, I think people underestimate, at least the legislators at the State House, how important it is and what it means for the future of our children. So I'm so glad that we've got a mom running for office who understands those struggles and can really represent the district well, right? Because that we have plenty of representatives who don't understand what it's like, the day-to-day struggles that people have. So, but I wanted to just shift to this press release that you put out, because you had shared with me this email that you received, and I was totally outraged because I've heard it before.
Yes.
Why are you running as a Republican? You
Yes.
shouldn't even be a Republican. You're a woman. You're this. You're that. You should be a Democrat. And I just
It
want to
hits
hear your
home.
thoughts on, yeah. Just a few pieces of this press release here. The email states that you received, Niyoka. I'm
Yes.
always intrigued when I learn of a young, vibrant, educated, and community advocate running for office, but a member of the MAGA GOP party. Why? You know, question marks there. You should be running as a, and then in all caps, Democrat. The senator, a white female senior Democrat, held a prominent leadership position in the state Senate for years before becoming a media personality. Her message parroted the Democrat narrative that MAGAs are racist, and scolded Powell for her choice of political affiliation. And then I love what you said. You said, the senator's audacity is not only patronizing, but it exposes the elitist attitude. You know, please talk to us a little bit about that.
Well, I mean, like most Black people, I've always voted Democrat since I was 18 years old, because, you know, you would think that a party that strives to better the living relationship between a minority population and the US government would be one that looks out for your best interest. And so, you know, being naive about voting and being naive about the actual issues and how they impact you later on in life, I would always vote Democrat. And it dawned on me a few years back, I started switching myself to independent. And when it came time to vote, I would then go in, vote as a certain way, and then revert myself back to independent, because I felt like there was a shift in me as I got older, that perhaps I was jumping to conclusions with just always voting one way, no matter what. Even if I didn't agree with what was happening, I always had hope that it would have been better. And so it dawned on me when COVID happened that I might have been a part of the problem. I might have been a part of that problem to, you know, create this environment in Rhode Island that was the perfect petri dish for testing and the perfect elements put together to just, you know, operate the state in a way that nobody else has a choice to say anything whatsoever. And that's not okay, because in any scientific study, you need to have a control group and you need to have something that kind of contradicts what you're doing in order to make sure that it works. And so I look at that like people registered to vote. You want to have the checks and balances. You want to make sure that you're not just putting all your eggs in one basket, because at the end of the day, you will be held just as accountable as the party that you put in power. And I feel that when people start saying, oh, it's the Democrats or the Republicans, it's like, but did you vote? And how did you vote? And did you understand what you were voting for? And I'm embarrassed to say, half the time I did not know what I was voting for when I was younger, because I didn't have a child. I didn't, you know, I was working the beginner job. I don't have a house. I didn't understand how the economics of a state would be running my life as I got older. And so all those dynamics together, I realized that my best interest, or even the community's best interest, was not in the hands of the Democratic Party, because had it been, Providence school system wouldn't be run the way that it was. The availability of housing in the city wouldn't be the way that it is, because we wouldn't keep taxing our constituents with hopes of it being better, but rather have a plan before we start saying, okay, we're going to have to tax you now based on X, Y, and Z. We get taxed based on the fact that there has been negligence. And that's not okay. And that's been the Democratic narrative, is that, oh, well, we need to subsidize this to help you. No, you need to back out and let us fix it and give us our money back. So give us back our funds in our paychecks, lower the tax rate so we can actually afford to help the city grow and help the state grow at the same time. So when I think about why I'm running as a Republican, it has nothing to do with feeling. It has everything to do with practicality, because practically we want to succeed. We want the city to be better, and we want the state better as a whole. We're always last for everything, and it's time to change. And the only way that will happen is if people vote differently and understand what they're voting for. So
I love
that's
what
why
you're
I'm
saying
voting
there.
as a Republican and running as a Republican.
I love that. I love that. When we just look at the history of the state, I
Mhm.
think it was in the 1930s. So here we are, what is that, 90 years later? It's
Yeah.
been under Democratic rule. The General Assembly has not had a Republican majority for 90 years. And we know that in Rhode Island, that's the power base of the state. It's not even the governor's office. It really starts, and my wife could chime in here if she wants to, but it really starts and ends in the legislature. So
Correct.
when we look at why Rhode Island is last, you have to say, well, who's been manning the ship? Who's been driving the car? And it's been Democrats. So it's not even that I want to be partisan here, but I love what you said just about, like, if this were a scientific experiment, what would be looking at? Every year we're seeing the same exact result for almost a century now, and we're seeing the consequences of that 90 years later.
Yes.
I was just thinking about a commission that I was sitting in on, and somebody was complaining about how awful the state is, and they were progressive, and they're talking about how awful the state is, and for a multitude of reasons they thought. And I had said something along the lines of like, well, if you're not happy with that, then stop voting Democrat. And some of the members on the commission were so angry. They're like, I take offense. And I was like, there's no, like, I'm not here to offend anybody.
There's no
But
offense.
let's, if you're unhappy with the way that things are going, then maybe you should consider voting differently in the future.
And I mean, even if they're not willing to vote differently, vote with common sense. Not because your party puts a bill forward doesn't mean it's the right bill to vote on, and not go back and edit and make sure that it actually works for the community. Because there's nothing wrong with them voting Democrat or voting Republican. It's about what is the practical meaning of that bill that you're putting forward, and how is it going to be equitable to the community? Because half the time the equity is one-sided. And that's where we fall short every single time, is that it's a me money grab, as opposed to let's make this community better. And most of the time I see people get into office and they're there for the terms, and they come out with all these accolades. And I'm sitting here going, why? You're a public servant. You're supposed to be there for the time that you're there, helping the community, not filling your pockets and then leaving us worse off than when you got into office and thinking you did a good job.
So you've had, you've been at the door. I feel like this message resonates with me, obviously, but we're maybe because we see things from a similar perspective. But as you're talking to people, is your sense that they're ready for this kind of change? I remember my grandmother, she voted Democrat her entire life. And I always said, why? Like, why do you vote Democrat? And she said, because Franklin Roosevelt got us out of the Great Depression. He got us through World War II. I was like a lot has happened. That was in the 1930s and 40s. But she just had this loyalty and just this myopic view of, well, that's what they did for us. And that doesn't even translate to Rhode Island politics. And I feel that there's a lot of people that still have some of that that kind of voter memory where it's just locked in, and I just vote one party, or this is how my family votes. It's kind of like a religion. We grew up Catholic, so we're always Catholic the rest of our lives. I wonder if it's the same way with Democrats, but I'm just curious, at the door, is that message resonating? Are people ready to hear, maybe it's time for a change?
I actually get a 50-50 response with that one, especially because of the seat that I'm running for. The seat that I'm running for is, Mary Ellen Goodwin's seat. She passed away back in April. And I've given the family time. And before I even announced, I waited about 6 weeks before I made the announcement that I was going to run, because I felt, as a Jamaican, when it comes to our culture, grieving is a process. And so I felt it was necessary to give that time for the family to, come to terms and be able to have some sense of normalcy before somebody else announces that they're going to be running for a seat that was so near and dear to their hearts. But when I go to the door, you do have people who remember Mary Ellen and what she did for the community that they were involved in. And, there is a legacy there. So we have to be, respectful of that as well, that people are in that mindset that, there was a great person there and that was the party she was part of, and that's who they're going to vote for, because there was great feelings and immense respect for the seat. And it's difficult when change happens that somebody else is going to come in and you have no idea, especially a Black girl at that, coming into this and saying, okay, I want change, and being a little bit more aggressive than they're used to, but rather, it's for the good of the community. I have never put myself ahead of my community, which is why I'm such an activist for what happens here in Providence. It's always been, how can I make it better for my neighbor? And if I can make it better for my neighbor, I'm going to do so. So I get the 50-50 of people being very much ready for that change, very much ready, but not ready to change their affiliation to Republican, but very much ready to vote Democrat because of that essence of, over the past couple of years or the past couple of decades, they've had great leadership. And I only hope to amplify that leadership, because there are a lot of similarities between myself and Mary Ellen. We both had the psych degree from Rhode Island College. We both are advocates for the community in the essence of, homelessness and getting, the community the items that they need. The difference would be, I have no affiliation to unions. I have no affiliation to those big corporations, because I feel that the community should depend on itself. It shouldn't need outside money to fund itself, but rather government does what government needs to. But at the same time, we need limited government, because if people can't work for what they want, we will never get out of where we are at here in Providence.
Providence is historically not very favorable to Republicans or even independents. So what is your path to victory? How do you see yourself kind of closing the gap and winning this seat?
Well, I can only be me. I don't know who else to be. I've been doing the door knocking. We've been doing the canvassing. We've done the honkin' waves. We've done the lit drops. We've done the mailers. We've encouraged people to vote early. All of the things that pretty much the Democratic Party has been doing. We've been trying to play ball with their changes when it comes to the election and how to go about voting. So we've done all of the, the assignments that are assigned to us by the party and the Secretary of State's office on how to get to our constituents. We've also been doing phone calls and, encouraging people to go out and vote. But I'm very community driven. So I've been going to city council meetings so that I'm more aware of what's happening in our community. I've been going to the school board meetings to see what is going on in the school board meetings. I've gone to nonprofit organizational meetings with different cultures just to get an idea of what their plights are. So if you don't see me knocking on a door, I'm probably somewhere with the Liberians or the Nigerians or the Jamaicans, or, I'm all over the city, or all over the North End, in order to get an understanding of the people who live here and what their plights are. And so my hope is to get them united enough to make that progress a reality.
To that point, I see you everywhere. I'm not on social media a lot, but when I am, you're always in my feed, and it's not, it's not just the campaigning. To your point, your roots in the community are deep. Working in the nonprofit field and going to various community events, you know that area, and I'm really hopeful for your victory. If someone is interested in supporting your campaign or volunteering, learning more about you, supporting you in any way, how can they do that?
Yeah, they can always reach out to me from our campaign website, PowellRISenate.com. We're always looking for donations. I'm on WinRed. We are always looking for people who are willing to come out and hold signs, especially during election season when it's time on the 7th of November. If they want to participate in a honkin' wave, canvassing, there's always space for more people to go out and interact with the community. And you don't have to live in Providence. It's just showing that initiative to participate in the electoral process is what civics is all about. It's being pushed in many of the schools, but only parts of it. And I think that getting more people involved in actually educating the community on what that civic engagement looks like is the way to go about it. So even if it's just to, host a little gathering at your home, we will do that too. So that way we can get our messages out and speak to people on one-on-one terms, because everything that we're talking about is going to affect your home. Every little decision we make in this next couple of years for the elections happening here in Rhode Island are going to affect your family. They're going to affect your children. They're going to affect your retirement. So invest wisely in who goes in to represent you.
Yeah, that's so good, because I tell my constituents what happens in Providence directly affects you, especially in your pocketbook. So even if you don't live in Providence, those of you listening who have a little bit of time that they can, either donate financially, give either your time, your talent, or your treasure, just a little bit goes a long way. And I say that because as a person who's run for office, and it takes a lot of a person, and you are putting yourself out there to the criticism and the attacks, and so I'm hopeful that people will rally beside you and either hold a sign on election day, be a poll watcher, donate to your campaign, canvass for you, whatever it is. I'm telling you, it may seem small, but it makes a huge impact when you're helping a candidate out, because a candidate can't do it all on their own. They need a little bit of support. So thank you for running, Niyoka.
Thank you. It takes a community to do all of this. And, we all have families, we have children. I myself have one, but still it's, it takes an army. It takes an army to get, your family in the place that it needs to go. And you can't go there by yourself. You have to bring everyone with you.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank you for coming on. I want to thank our listeners for chiming in to hear Niyoka and how she's an amazing candidate. She's a special person. I really enjoy getting to know you. I think that you're just perfect for the community. You're a firecracker. You are a strong advocate. And I think that you would just be an amazing representative for your community. So those of you, please donate, please, either your time, your talent, or your treasure. Give Niyoka a little bit of your time there on election day or prior to that. And thank you for tuning in. We'll have a guest next week. And if you want to learn more about the podcast or hear previous episodes, you can either do it on YouTube or you can go on Spotify or wherever you get your podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.